The Demonology Warlock is the strongest spec in one of the strongest classes in the game, top of the line damage, boasts a high skill ceiling, and you turn into a black furry boy. I think that's pretty hot. You have two potential talent builds. This one uses Incinerate and is best optimized for single damage, and this one uses Shadow Bolt and is best optimized for clip damage. I personally recommend Incinerate as it is way easier, and on top of that, single target is way more important than clipping damage as your total damage numbers go. Besides, your AoE for large groups is the exact same. I am gonna break down the differences between both rotations as I go, just in case you wanna play it anyway. They are not that different. For minor glyphs, we are gonna take the Glyph of Drain Soul, Health Funnel, and Ritual of Souls for both specs, as they are pretty much your only useful options. Then for major glyphs, we are gonna take the Glyph of Life Tap and Soul Link. Now, if you are Shadow Bolt spec, obviously you wanna take the Shadow Bolt Glyph. Otherwise, you wanna take the Soulstone Glyph. For prime glyphs, we are gonna take the Glyph of Immolate and the Glyph of Metamorphosis. If you are gonna go Incinerate spec, now you wanna take the Incinerate Glyph, and otherwise you're gonna take the Glyph of Corruption. Luckily, both specs have the same stat priority, so let's break it down. You first wanna get your 17% hit cap, of course, like any other DPS, and remember Alliance only needs 16 because of the Draenei racial, and from then on there is not that much that you actually need to stack, so we are talking more of a flat priority list here. Your best stat is Intellect, and it is followed closely by Haste rating. Now, Haste is a complicated stat. It shows up twice in this list, and that is between caps. Let me explain. Dots are now affected by your haste. You need 21.4% haste to get an additional Immolate tick going, and you need 25% to get an additional corruption tick. You wanna reforge and gem into exactly those values or not get any haste at all before mastery rating. Mastery rating goes next, as it gives your pet more damage and it makes your metamorphosis more powerful, and then goes haste rating that goes beyond either of your caps. And finally, the last stat is crit. Not surprising, you are a dot class. Big boom booms is not your thing. You are more of a melting kinda boom boom. Okay, some important buffs you wanna keep up. We are always gonna be using Fel Armor because it gives you spell power, and the other important buff we have is Dark Intent. Now, many flame wars happened over people arguing who gets to have Dark Intent, and I am not gonna touch that discussion with a 10-foot pole. Basically, Dark Intent gives you and a target 3% haste and some damage and healing bonuses. Just choose your butt buddy and go. If you wanna read a 20-page long argument about who should get it, just go to MMO Champion, or even more easy, just go to your guild Discord and ask who should get it, and you're gonna see all the officers getting into a really nice screaming match. Now let's talk about your rotation. Remember that you should be dropping Curse of Elements first if nobody else is already doing it. For the rotations themselves, they are kinda complex, so let's break down single target first. We wanna start with Immolate, then you drop Bane of Doom and refresh it, then we drop Corruption and we also maintain it. Next is Shadow Flame for Big Boom Boom, and then you cast Hand of Gul'dan. It also refreshes your Immolate, so that's less work for you. After this point, whenever you get a Molten Core proc, you have 3 Incinerates as a filler to use. Of course, a lot of the time you are not gonna be using all 3 Incinerates, because there's always gonna be a higher spell in the priority list that is gonna come up or something like that, or maybe a buff is gonna run out and you're gonna have to refresh it. Next in priority is Soulfire if the target is under 25% HP, as Decimation makes your execution phase really strong. And after finally filling all that priority list, you are gonna throw either Incinerate or Shadow Bolt as a filler, depending on if you went Shadow Bolt spec or Incinerate spec. Okay, now the multiple target rotation is extremely complex as it depends on the number of enemies. As I explained in my previous video, there is 2 types of AoE for casters in Cataclysm. There is AoE in a large group, the normal AoE, let's say, and cleaving AoE, as in smaller groups. Your rotation changes depending on that, and there is actually 4 types of AoE rotations if you believe it or not. By the way, you will want to start most fights with a Felguard as your pet. I will talk about pets in a minute here, but that also means that you should and can use his Felstorm ability as an AoE on top of your other AoE. Now against 2 or 3 targets you apply Corruption, Immolate and Bane of Doom on the primary target. Then Corruption, Immolate and Bane of Agony on another target. Apply Corruption and Immolate on the third target if you have one. If the enemies are close together and you are in range, now you use Shadow Flame, and after that you try to alternate throwing a Shadow Bolt to each one of the mobs. And that is why Shadow Bolt spec is better at cleaving. Against 4 or 5 targets you wanna apply Immolate and Corruption to all the enemies and then channel Hellfire while standing on top of them. Then you drop a Shadow Flame if you can. Now against 6 or more targets, or in the case that the mobs will die too fast, so dotting them makes no sense, your AoE rotation is very easy. You just do Shadow Flame into Hellfire over and over. Remember once again that your Felguard should be AoEing with you, so keep an eye on where he is standing. You're gonna have to maybe move him to get the most value of it. Okay, I mentioned the Felguard thingy, so I guess it's time to talk about the pets. You have 2 pets that you will actually use, the Felguard and the Spell Hunter. The Felguard is the AoE damage pet, and he also has the best Demon Soul buff. Demon Soul is an ability where you gain a buff for 20 seconds depending on your pet. The Felguard gives you 15% haste and 10% damage, which is absolutely insane. The Fel Hunter only gives you 20% damage on Corruption and Bane of Doom, which is, I mean, it's something, but it's not good. Now, you could just use the Felguard, but the problem is that the Spell Hunter has better single target damage, and that means we are gonna have to do one of the coolest mechanics Warlocks ever had: pet twisting. You wanna start the pool with your Felguard normally. You wanna use Demon Soul as soon as you get all your dots up on you, and make sure you also spend your Felstorm. And then when your Demon Soul runs out, you wanna use Soulborn to get an instant Fel Hunter summon so you can go on with your rotation. There are a lot of really complex pet twisting rotations. I honestly do not even fully understand them, but you do not really need to understand them either. One caveat, remember that the Felguard is still your best AoE pet, so if you think that the fight is gonna have a lot of adds, or maybe God forbid it has an AoE DPS check, which is a common mechanic in Cataclysm. Sometimes bosses summon adds, and if you don't kill them in a certain amount of time you wipe, so in that case you wanna keep the Felguard the entire fight just to have access to the Felstorm. And that's all about the pets. Except you have a third pet you want to use. You have a special 10-minute cooldown super duper powerful demon, the Doomgard or the Infernal. Doomgard is for single target damage and Felguard is for insane AoE damage. They share a cooldown, so choose one depending on the situation. You ideally wanna pop them at the same time as your Bloodlust, your Volcanic Potion, your Trinkets, everything at the same time for the max value possible, as they are one of your best cooldowns. Except, you have yet another cooldown in your rotation. Metamorphosis is your flagship talent. You turn into a beautiful, furry, black man. And in turn you do 20% more damage. You gain a War Stomp that also jumps, and a Hellfire that lets you move during it. Metamorphosis is a Bloodlust on top of a Bloodlust. As in, you wanna pop all your cooldowns at the same time, so each one of them is more valuable. For random utility, I guess I should mention that your Soulstone is now a full-on combat res. For gems, this is one of the first few classes in the expansion where going for socket bonuses is actually not a terrible idea, as you have a viable gem for every color. Your meta gem is Burning Shadow Spirit Diamond for intellect and crit, then our best gem is the Brilliant Queen's Garnet for intellect in red sockets. You also have Reckless Lava Coral that works on yellow sockets if you need to hit a haste cap, or if you can reforge haste into something else to make up for it. And the Veiled Shadow Spinel works on blue sockets if you either need hit, if you do not need hit or haste, or if you cannot reforge them out of your existing gear, then you just wanna stack the Brilliant Queen's Garnet instead. For consumables, we are gonna be eating the Severed Sagefish Head for intellect. Remember, it also comes in fist form. Then we are gonna take the Flask of the Draconic Mind for even more intellect, and then we are gonna be chugging volcanic potions alongside our trinkets and cooldowns for the most intellect possible. Cause intellect. You have a lot of viable professions for the spec, as the intellect gains from them are very similar. You have tailoring, blacksmithing, jewel crafting, alchemy, enchanting, engineering, inscription, leatherworking and herbalism as viable options. Finally, this is a list of the best in-slot enchants for every item. You can check it out in the description. And if you do not wanna see Gul'dan's uncle conquering your planet, you better subscribe and join the Discord, or may the Lord get you, and thank you for watching.